What's going on, guys? This is the Raging Snail of the Scarlet Squad, out to bring you a deck profile. Today I want to show off my Metalfoe Super Heavies, or Super Heavy Metalfoes, however you pronounce them. I've been looking at a lot of popular builds for this deck, the Metalfoe specifically, and there's a lot of engines and a lot of splashable things people put in them, but I wanted to try out Superheavy Samurais, and without further ado, let's get into it. And I guess I'll just start off with the Metalfoes. 3 gold driver, 3 silvered, 3 stealing, and the 3 vol flame. This is just all your Metalfoes, and that's all we really have in the TCG at the moment. But gold driver and silver are your low scales. Gold's your 19 beater, and silver is your 17 beater, so they're alright. The 2 little ones you could bring out with E-Telly, although E-Telly's at 1, so screw that. Stealing is your defensive one with 21 defense, and vol flame's your high attack one with 24. Vol flame's probably the best in my opinion, but for the most part, each Metalfoe, while it's in the pendulum zone, once per turn, you can destroy a face-up card you control, and then you can set a Metalfoe spell or trap directly from your deck. So that's all their scales, and the top 2 here have the low scales of 1, and these guys here have the top scales of 8. So there's really a lot you can do with that. It's not very restrictive, and it leaves you a lot of open with a lot of other popular themes, and that's why I'm trying out the Superheavy Samurais. And I'll start out with 2 Big Ben keys. When you normal special him, you can change his battle position, so it's really good if you bring out with Giant Rat, if you play that variant, or if you just do like Call of the Haunted, you can just put him in defense, which is really good, and he can attack in defense. So pretty good 35 beater. And then I play 3 of my favorite Superheavy Samurai, the Scales. Scales is absolutely amazing, especially right now with a lot of pendulum summoning being done, besides Kieran getting hit. But if your opponent has 2 or more monsters, you can special this without any restriction. And if you normal or special summon him in general, you can bring out a level 4 or lower Superheavy Samurai from your graveyard. So really good at going into some special plays, and it doesn't give it your normal stun, which is pretty nice. But we also play 3 Soul Piercer. Whenever Soul Piercer is sent from the field to the graveyard, you get a free search for any Superheavy Samurai, and that's really great because if you pop him when you have a Metalfoe in your pendulum zone, you not only get to set a Metalfoe Fusion, for example, but you can also get a free search. And it's not once per turn. So if you have multiple ways to bring it back, let's say you destroy it and then you bring it out with scales, so you have 2 level 4 monsters, not only could you go into a rank 4 if you really wanted to, but you could just do something to it again and you get another search. The only other use of Soul Piercer is that if you equip it, it becomes something that where it'll receive piercing damage. So if you were to equip this to your Big Ben key while he's in defense, and it just runs over anything with 35 power. So it can do a lot of damage. Later on, there's a lot of things you can do to make that damage go up. But yeah, when you equip it, it's just piercing, and it's just a free search when it hits the grave. Next up, we play 2 Flutus. Flutus is kind of like your savior for the deck. When you contribute him to special summon any Superheavy Samurai from your hand, so really good at bringing out your Big Mankey because you can't pendulum summon him. But while it's in the graveyard, if your opponent wants to target a Superheavy Samurai, you can banish it instead. So Flutus is pretty good in my opinion. We also play 2 Transporter. Transporter's okay. He's a free monster. We can pendulum summon it. But if you do bring him out for free, as long as you have no spawn trap cards in the graveyard, the only downside with that is you can only go into Super Heavies for the rest of the turn. So it's not super bad. But his other good effect is you can tribute him and give your opponent 2 monsters. And if you give them 2 monsters, or if you give them 1 monster, you draw the same amount. So he's not too bad in that case. And with the Super Heavy Samurai, since they all have really high defense, and for example, if you give them a Metalfoe with low defense, such as Silver, which has 100 defense, and you have Soul Piercer with it, that'll do quite some damage. So Transport is really good at plugging up your opponent's monster field, and if your opponent is doing PK Fire or a lot of Burning Abyss, it'll make their Burning Abyss monsters die, except for Dante, of course. But yeah, so it's kind of a bit surprise, but it's okay. Also, just 2 Trumpeter. Trumpeter is your main tuner. You can special them for free as long as you don't have any spell and trap cards in the graveyard. But if you do that, same thing with Transport, you can only go into Super Heavies for the rest of the turn. if you tribute summon for a super heavy, he will come right back from the graveyard. So really good at staying alive, so he can float a little bit, and he's your mainly tuner, so you can do some plays there. Whoops, 3 trumpeter, my mistake. Yeah, you can pendulum summon him, which is the best part, but yeah, 3 trumpeter mainly to get off your synchros. And then 2 drum. Drum is kind of really good later in the game, especially when your graveyard fills up with super heavies, because if you pop drum, or if your opponent does, you get to bring out a Superheavy Samurai from your graveyard. So even if you pop it with your scale and it dies, you can bring out any Superheavy Samurai. And you preferably want to bring out scale. Scales will get you another monster, so it's really good at floating. And if you have your big Superheavy Samurais, your synchros in the graveyard, you can bring them out with drum too. And then, right now I have 1 Max C. I would be playing 2 Max C, but right now I just only have 1. I just can't find the other one, but yeah, 2 Max C if I could play it. That's going to do it for monsters, on spells, and pretty much the rest of the deck. So normally you can't play any spell or trap cards in a Superheavy Samurai deck, but what's great about Metalfoe Fusion is after you use it, you can put it back in your deck to draw 1. So really good at keeping your graveyard empty, and you know, you get a free card, so pretty good. And that's it for spells. Just for some traps, play 3 counter. Whenever something dies, you get a free Metalfoe, so it's pretty good in my opinion. And then you can banish it to recycle, or to give yourself another free scale from your Pendulum Zone, so that's pretty good. And then I'm trying out 3 Rise to Full Height. This card is absolutely amazing. What it does, it's a brand new card from Shining Victories. So actually it's relatively new, but you target a face-up monster on the field, and you double its defense. So really good if you want to punch in for piercing damage. Or you can also troll your opponent with this, because at the end of the turn, its defense goes to 0. So if you're going in for late game and you hesitate and wait a turn, when your opponent's defense, if you target their opponent, drops to 0, then you can really do even more damage. So you can kind of manipulate this how you want. And you can also banish it the same turn it's sent, so you avoid that like breakthrough skill clause. But yeah, you can banish it the same turn, and you target a monster your opponent controls, or target a monster you control, and your opponent must attack it. So it's really good, especially if you don't want your opponent attacking certain monsters or getting certain plays out of the way. But yeah, Rise to Full Height's a very fun and trolly card, so yeah, that's why we play it. On to the extra deck. I have 3 Adamante. Adamante's okay, he doesn't have an effect, but he's a 25-25 both ways, so that's pretty good. You could play Instant Fusion if you really wanted to, but we can't because this is a super heavy variant. But yeah, it's just mainly a Metalfoe monster, and a monster with 25 or less attack. And all your Super Heavy Samurais, none of them have over 2,500, so you could use that for 3 Adamante. And then I also play 2 Oris. Ori's really great because it does double piercing. Or all your Metalfoes would do double piercing. He needs 2 Metalfoes to bring him out, so it's okay. But when he dies, he can pop a card on the field. That does it for about Metalfoes. For Super Heavies, 1 Ogre. Ogre is a Harpy's Feather Duster, so very powerful in my opinion. 1 QB. QB's okay. Both Ogre and QB can attack in defense position, so you have a 25 and another 25. But QB will gain 900 defense for every monster, special summon monster that your opponent controls. So it can get beefed up pretty good. And then of course 2 Susanawos. Susanawos is absolutely the boss monster of this deck. I absolutely love him. He can attack and defense, so he's sitting at 38, and you can buff him up if you can, or if you play a certain way. But he can steal spell and trap cards from your opponent's graveyard, and that's because of his effect is once per turn during that player's turn. So it's a quick effect. You can, if you have no spell and trap cards in your graveyard, of course, you can steal a spell or trap your opponent's graveyard and set it to your side of the field, and it's banished when it leaves the field. So your opponent won't get to use it again, which is very nice. So like, you could take their Raigeki, use it against them, and then they would have no way of getting it back. As for the generic stuff, 1 Nat Beast just to lock out your opponent's Pendulum Zones. 1 Shambara. This man is just punching in for some damage. You can attack twice, and it'll gain attack every time. So it's a really fun card. 1 Metaphys Horse. I'm just trying this out. You can do a lot of things with this. If you use any effect monster, which you probably will, you can target a card on the field and negate its effects. So, actually I should explain. Horse has 3 different effects for the non-tuner to use with it, and because you have a pendulum monster effect on normal and a normal monster, you can do whatever you want. If you choose a normal monster, it's unaffected by card effects for the turn. Like I said, if you use an effect monster, it can negate something on the field. And if it's a pendulum monster, which is the best part, your opponent has to give you a monster they control, and it doesn't target. So that would be good for Dark Destroyer, but Dark Destroyer's at 1, so it's okay. But it's still a fun card. 1 Moonlight for some board clear. I'm just trying this out until they get their new Super Heavy Samurai that'll be coming out, I believe, in Invasion of Venom or Raging Tempest. I don't remember which one. But yeah, it's just good for removal. 1 Ignister because you can play it in this deck. And 1 Trish. Ignister is just really good for spinning back stuff, and Trish, you know, just banishes stuff. Anyway, guys, that's gonna about do it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time, this is the Card Squad signing out.